Welcome to On Fighting in Thailand, the best news and analysis covering the economics and infrastructure of Muay Thai. I'm Matt Lucas, journalist, commentator, and ex-Muay Thai fighter. Make stronger fighters, make stronger people. Today we will be talking to Bryan Dobler as part of our series on cornering. So as always, if you'd like to reach out to me, you can follow me on Instagram, MattLucasMuayThai, or email me at a.matt.lucas@gmail.com. I also have my website, www.matt-lucas.com. Thanks, as always, to all the people that have supported me so far, sharing the podcast, leaving reviews. If you'd like to leave a review, that would be super helpful. You can do so on the iTunes store. I want to personally thank a few people: Vinny Scotto, Patrick Rivera, Dave Brooks, Sean Madden, Wendell Galano, Chris Tran, and a few others who helped me out when I broke my camera. It was a while ago, but I use my camera all of the time, and I'm doing a lot of stuff with it. I've been putting together a lot of interviews that are available over on Muay Thaigram. I did a short series with Rob Cox, which is really great. I interviewed him as he sat down to dinner. We've done it twice. One was burgers. The second time was pies and mashed peas. Both videos I'm really happy about, mainly because of Rob. There's a lot of insight. There's a lot of knowledge with Rob Cox. If you're not familiar with him, he is one of the foremost Muay Thai journalists out here in Thailand. He's spent 20 years out here, knows a lot about the sport, has a lot of connections. He's a really great guy. So very happy that I was able to support him in that way. Also, as always, I have my book out, On Fighting in Thailand. It educates and helps guide careers by helping save fighters from costly mistakes. Right now, borders are starting to slowly open up. If fighters want to come out, now is, people need to be thinking about it. Lockdown has closed down a lot of gyms and promotions. If you are serious about coming out, now is the time. It's time to get going on this. Obviously, the lockdown and COVID has shown people how quickly things can go away. So if you're going to do it now. Get my book. It really helps. Thanks, as always, to my sponsors, Nak Muay Legends, for their continued support of the show. They create some great Muay Thai apparel with portions of the proceeds going back to the legends they celebrate. All the superstars have been paid for their images as well. Check out their gear at www.nakmoylegends.com. Use OnFighting to get 15% off your order. Thanks, as always, to Patrick Rivera for getting the show started. He's also sponsoring Jaleel Barnes now, which I'm really excited about. Jaleel is one of the fighters I've been starting to help out and manage. He is a Muay Thai Gram sponsored athlete. He is very well, has a lot of credentials in America, was part of a USMF team in South America, won most of the major tournaments in America, and now he is working his way up the Max Muay Thai scene. We will probably move him at some point in the future to other shows, so very excited about that. A little bit about the show today. It is about cornering. So this is very important as a fighter and as a trainer. Also to understand the game a bit more, you should know about cornering. Obviously, it looks like not a lot is going on. A person just jumps in the ring and gives the person water, whatever. But there's a lot that actually goes on behind the scenes and also in preparation. So one of the reasons why the show has been delayed a bit is because I've been doing so much cornering. So Brogan Stewart, he fought on One Championships, New Breed recently. Then after that, I cornered Smilla Sundell as she fought Pornpan Ruangpa. I was with Jaleel Barnes when he fought Thomas saw Chaidalin, also with Omar when he fought Petnolin, Sati in Muay Thai. Then most recently, just this past weekend, I was with Angela Chang when she rematched Nong Hong Mu Ping Aloy Ju Bung. I believe her fight name is. Anyways, so a lot of cornering going on. So, every time I corner, I learn a lot, and it's different for every situation. So recently, when I cornered Brogan, it was an MMA fight. I know very little about MMA, so it was a very unique and interesting experience for me personally. Omar won by rear naked choke. I don't know how to do a rear naked choke, so this was a really interesting experience for me. With both Jaleel and Omar, they were both cut, so dealing with cuts in the corner was a new experience for me. Just dealing with the blood, making sure the Vaseline is there, stemming the blood coming out. That way the fight can keep going. These are really, really important moments that are very, very short. You have 2 minutes to deal with this situation. Then they go back into the ring. So you need to be precise. You need to be professional. You need to know what you're doing. And then with Angela, she was rematching Nong Hong. So that was cool. And then Smilla had a long layoff. So, there's all these things going on all the time. A little bit about our guest today. Bryan Dobler is a long-term gym owner and trainer based out of Fontana, California, is where the original Double Dose is. He has another branch out in Australia. We'll talk about that a little bit. Dobler has guided a lot of people's careers, including Nicole Fernandez, who is definitely a rising star in America, a really good female athlete. She's won USMF twice, I believe. Definitely a talent to look out for. Has produced some solid fighters. Robert Rainier, who was out here earlier this year, fought on Max Muay Thai. Jesse over at Boxing Club in San Diego as well. He is currently based out here in Thailand, so he's been coming to a lot more fights and helping me out with cornering. So I thought it would be a good idea to sit down, have a chat with him about cornering and some of the ins and outs of the game. So without further ado, the interview with Bryan Dobler. Thank you, Dobler, for coming on the show today. How are you doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So obviously we are doing a series on cornering. You've spent a lot of time with fighters both here in Thailand and abroad. I guess let's start at the very beginning. When you are cornering for someone, what do you do in terms of getting to the facility? Start right at the basics.
Well, I guess it's always a good idea to be there early, or to leave a little bit early, just in case you run into traffic or anything like that. You don't want the fighter stressed. That's the last thing you want is to get there late, have the fighter worried about I gotta hurry and get stuff done, and you don't want to add any additional stress on the fighter. So getting there early is important. I generally travel with the fighter. I don't usually let them drive, simply because I want to keep them safe. If they do have somebody that's driving them, that's a little bit different. But I usually like to travel with the fighter. Helps me kind of gauge, where they're at, how they're feeling, and all that.
One of the first times I cornered out here, I was in a car accident.
Oh.
And so
Exactly.
It made things very, very nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
I was driving a car. I backed into another car. It was a large truck. I was cornering Brogan, and I backed into an attorney's car. And then, of course, he started to freak out, and I started to freak out. We ended up making it to the venue, but they had to switch the order of the fights.
Yes.
And it was a big headache. but definitely leave early all the time.
Leave early. Good idea.
It was good that we met early too.
Mm-hmm.
That way the car accident didn't completely foul the fight.
Exactly.
But it happened.
And generally, I
happen.
prepare fighters before we even leave. Generally, I prepare them for the chance that things could change.
Yeah.
Like, if things are going right, like everything's on time and scheduled, there's no fight change, there's no order change, there's everything's going. That's when I worry. Like, because usually
there's always something.
There's something going to happen, and so if you prepare them ahead of time for that, they're not quite as freaked out when something does happen. Yeah.
So, what are some of the things that you bring all the time?
I always bring scissors, tape, gauze. I like to bring some foam padding that I put on the chair for the fighters when I wrap their hands. Vaseline, cut medicine. I generally bring a fair supply of Ziploc baggies.
Oh yeah, you like to mix the Vaseline and the Muay together in the
I
Ziploc
do.
bag.
I like to do that, but I also bring them simply because they make great ice bags for after the fight, and it's just a really
It's actually a good idea.
Yeah,
I'm
there's a lot of
sticker
really
that.
good simple uses for it that you'll find. So I carry like a box of Ziploc baggies with me always when I'm there. Other things, of course, the Moncon, I usually will bring an extra cup just because, sometimes fighters forget things.
And they need something to drink out of.
Wrong kind of cup. I wouldn't drink out of that cup, but yeah, you get the idea. So just having that extra cup there is just in case. I bring an extra mouthpiece. It's not molded, just something like if I have to.
That's a good idea, actually.
If I have to just put it in a microwave or get some hot water somewhere and have them mold it, at least they have it. What else do I bring? Scissors, tape, gauze. Mostly that stuff. I have a small carry-on luggage piece that I bought that I put everything into, including I put tie pads and focus mitts in there. And of course it always depends on the venue too. It depends on where you're fighting and what the rule set is. Like if I'm fighting on an amateur show, I bring shin guards and elbow pads, and I bring an extra set of elbow pads for every time, because there's always that opponent that says, "Well, I didn't know we were doing elbows.
Yeah.
I don't have no elbow pads." I'm like, here. So it's better than the alternative. So I try to be pretty prepared. I've been doing it for a long time, so I have kind of a system.
And then you always restock after the fight as well.
Yes.
I remember you telling me that once.
Yeah, I restock immediately when I get back. I usually we get home late, so I put the bag in my office, and then the next day I'm in. I restock everything, gauze, tape, anything that I've
throw it in the bag.
Yep, I got everything back to working order, so I don't have to worry about it. And then that also helps me, like if I'm running low on gauze or something, it helps me. Oh man, I got to order gauze rather than I got to fight this week. I got to order gauze.
Yeah.
So it just kind of helps me also know like where are my supplies at? How am I doing on supplies?
So once you're at the venue itself, when do you wrap your fighters' hands? Do you do it right away? Do you wait a bit?
Yeah, I don't like to wrap them too early. I think it can, it can definitely cause some fatigue for their hands if you wrap too early and they just kind of get uncomfortable. So, but I like to wrap, a fair amount of time out. So, plenty of time, leaving plenty of time that we're warming up, 4 fights before and everything's ready to go, 4 or 5 fights before.
And you haven't wrapped hands out here in Thailand yet, have you?
I have not, but I've seen you do it several times, and I like the way you do it. Yeah. I have wrapped similarly back in the day when we used to have fights in California that were
a little less regulated.
During that time, I wrapped basically the same way you do.
Yeah.
and we would, I think maybe for 10 years, I took fighters, maybe at least an average of about 3 fighters per weekend for 10 years.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had to work the corner for more than one fighter at a time. So, I mean, last night was a bit busy, but I didn't actually have to help prepare Omar and Jaleel. It was just like
I had 8
Jaleel.
one night.
8?
Yeah. That was the night I decided never to do that again. So I keep it to 2 or 3. I won't go above 3 usually.
When you're dealing with multiple people, what is that like? What do you do differently?
You just got to manage your time well.
Yeah.
Sometimes like if I'm cornering one person, I can do that myself.
Yeah.
But if I'm cornering more than one person, I need a support team.
Mm-hmm.
So I need people there with me to help me to, hey, I'm going out, you got to warm this person up. I'm going out, you got to take care of this, So, and you got to plan the time well. Sometimes, promoters don't really think about things like putting fighters back to back to back. And so you've just got to be prepared, and communicate with the team, like, hey, I'm just going to leave the bucket out there. We're going to go straight out.
Mm-hmm.
That way, and the fighter knows, and there's not a bunch of chaos and confusion. That's really one of the main things, is just managing, managing the expectations for the fighter as well. So the fighter's not
freaking
out. Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things, actually.
It is. I think it's one of the big components of cornering, for sure.
Just guiding them along. Hey, this is what's going to happen about now. This is the general things of what's going to happen. Okay, you go and you fight. Then this is going to happen. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, anxiety happens when you don't know what's coming, and so if you tell them what's coming up, people are a lot less anxious, and they've generally got enough on their plate. We want to take most of that anxiety away, and the way you do that is just by communicating with them and letting them know what to expect, and that things can change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what do you do when you warm people up?
I just move around with them a little bit, to be honest with you. I don't like doing pads with people before fights. Mm-hmm. I've seen extreme cases of that where people are doing 10 rounds of pads before they go for a fight, which makes 0 sense to me at all. But I just move around with them. I do what's called duan cheng. Duan cheng means to remind them. So, and of course it really depends, because I've been in the corner in different capacities as well. Mm-hmm. So if I'm in the corner with my athlete, my fighter, then we have prepared a strategy throughout the training. Mm-hmm. And we, in the warm-up, we simply do things to remind them about that strategy. Mm-hmm. So strategy and technique are very different. So strategy is kind of like an overall guiding principle.
Strategy versus tactics.
Yeah. So for me, strategy might be, like in that movie with about Roberto Duran, Hands of Stone.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Yeah. He the one of the things that he did is he combed Roberto Duran's hair in the corner. Mm-hmm. And it was just like all about.
That's a good idea, because when the judges look and they see the hair flop around, a lot of times they'll think there's more damage than there actually is.
I generally advise fighters with longer hair to either figure out a way to braid it or cut it because of that, specifically because of that. Especially amateur fighters with the headgear have these like ponytails sticking out of the top, and every time they get hit, it's like an indicator that they got hit. It's like so he combs his hair, simply because his strategy was to kind of intimidate the other person, because the other person was looking all tired, and he was coming out fresh every time. Mm-hmm. And so I don't necessarily comb my fighter's hair, but
why, you don't bring a comb?
Yeah, I bring a comb. I guess that's one of the things I forgot to mention. Yeah, you got to bring a comb.
You always bring a comb.
But the strategy was simply just to make him look fresh and like he's ready to go, where the other person is not. And so strategy can be, hey, in this fight I want you to move forward, or in this fight I want you to fight at this range. It's not, hey, when they do this, do that.
Yeah.
Because that's confusing for athletes. Now, if I am cornering my athlete, if I'm training an athlete to compete against a specific person, I will do those things in training. So what I will do is I'll watch film, I'll see what the other fighter's good at, and I'll do a lot. When I hold pads, a lot of people, there's this trend of holding pads nowadays where it's like, it's all about the coach looking good on, Instagram. For me, it's fight simulation. And it's the same thing as the military, doing, simulations all the time where, that simulation becomes it just comes
natural.
out. Yeah, it becomes natural. They're not really having to think about it. But I always, if I do that, if I say, okay, this person's good at this, they do this a lot, and I do that, I always am going to program in more than one choice too, because sometimes something doesn't work.
Yeah.
So if you tell a fighter, hey, when they do this, do that, and it doesn't work, the fighter gets frustrated.
Yeah.
But when you just constantly train it in and you give them more than one choice, then one doesn't work, they automatically switch to the other. So strategy is kind of like the overall guiding, principle that kind of guides which techniques they'll use. So for me, that's.
And then going back a little bit, you have fought out here in Thailand and in the States, so
Yeah.
you probably warmed up yourself in different ways. Is there a preference that you personally had?
I tried like everything. Tried hitting pads. Sometimes it made me feel better to hit pads. But for the most part, that just warming up, kind of shadow boxing and just getting my body warm worked. I tried that, what was popular, like this blowing out your lung where you actually like sprint and just like get your first, like, so you get your second wind in the fight. I tried all kinds of stuff. Like for me, it was experimental, like I just tried everything. And, what made me feel best was just staying warm, staying loose, and going in and doing it, and not expending too much energy before the fight, because to me, you're there to fight. If you've done your training properly, like it's 15 minutes of fighting on a 5-round fight, and you've been training 2 hours a night. 15 minutes really shouldn't be anything. But at the same time, you don't want to expend unnecessary energy, because you're not accounting for, getting a knee in the liver.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of energy out.
I know for myself, at least, I definitely like the Thai style warming up.
Yeah.
Just having like a massage.
Yep.
The Namamoy just warms up your body. It's pretty light. I don't think, like you said, tons of pad work is good.
No,
I think mess around a little, warm people up, remind them of things, and okay, you go.
Yep, that's the same way I do it, man. Exactly.
So when you are in the corner, so your fighter has gone from the backstage to the ring itself, what are you doing as a corner man?
Well, it kind of depends. So it depends on what capacity. So again, if I'm cornering my fighter, it's a little bit different than if I'm helping someone corner. Mm-hmm. So I've been in the corner for a lot of fights where promoter would just ask me, "Hey, can you corner for this guy? He doesn't have a corner." So that would be
that's crazy to me.
It would be a different, but realistically, they do that because they know I'm going to do my job.
Right.
And they know, like, even we fought. Who was it? Guy from England. Richard, he fought for WBC title against Malipet. Malipet's a friend. Like, I like Malipet a lot, but when I'm in the corner, I'm gonna corner that guy to win.
Yeah.
And he did. He won the WBC title. I've been in the corner when Amanda Kelly fought Julie Kitchens. I've been in the corner when Liam fought against Malipet. I was in the corner with Dan McGowan when he fought Romy. Romy's a friend too, you know. But when you're in the corner, you do the job. So, but
it's a game. It's, you know.
But as like a second corner, it's a different aspect too. Mm-hmm. So as a second, I'm really just a support team. Mm-hmm. You know, as a primary corner, I have a system that I follow, but I don't want to push my system on somebody else, because that can also cause, you know,
some
fighter
disruption.
Yeah, of course. So for me, as a second corner, I'm just going to be ancillary support. I'm going to give you know, the main corner, I'm going to give them, you know, the Vaseline. I'm going to, you know, remind them, hey, here's your water, you know, and then I'll probably mention some things that I see that maybe they're not seeing, you know, but I really kind of take a back seat in that role. If I'm cornering my fighter specifically, I have a specific system that I use.
What is it?
Specific system, when my fighter finishes their round, before they go out, of course, you know, it's just removing the Moncon and you know, reminding them what the overall strategy is before they go out. And then after the first round, the first thing I want them to do is take 3 deep breaths. Mm-hmm. They don't get anything. They don't get water or advice until after they've slowed their breathing. So, you know, that's kind of just a system for me.
I found that when I've done that, that's something I've heard from other people. When I've done that, the fighter tends to listen better.
They do. You know,
30 seconds, breathe. Okay, here's some water. Breathe. Okay.
And sometimes you got to remind them to breathe. I mean, you've got all this adrenaline going on. You know, you've got a flight or fight response. So you've got a whole bunch of stuff going on in the body. And, you know, if the fighter is you know, fairly new or inexperienced, that stuff can really weigh on them. Yeah. And that breathing can bring them back down. You know, and you've got to make sure that they're paying attention, because whatever you're going to tell them, whatever you're going to tell them, you know, generally is important. So, you know, and, you know, as a corner, you know, you you may make mistakes. I've cornered thousands of fights and I still make mistakes. Like there's times where I'll corner and I'll look at it and I'll go, man, like I said the wrong thing, you know, like that just didn't work, you know. But you know, so
I've definitely said the wrong thing sometimes. Sometimes I get my right and left confused. So I'll be telling someone something, and they'll be like right knee, but it's like left. You know, left punch or something.
Yeah. You're kind of looking at mirror. Well, the worst was I had a fighter that every time I yelled right kick, he would throw a left kick, and every time I yelled left kick, he would throw a right kick. And I finally figured this out, so I started calling left kick. And then he started doing left kicks. Yeah, so I was like, oh, forget it, man. Just forget it. I don't even know what to tell this guy anymore, because whatever I tell him, he just does. And that's the other thing is, you know, when my fighter's actually in there fighting, is I generally, you know, it's nice if you have the kind of relationship and the kind of understanding with a fighter that you can almost control him like a video game. Like you go left kick, right kick. But for me, I think general instructions work better. So, for instance, if my fighter does a lot of knees off of punches, then I'm going to tell him to punch, because the knees are going to come.
Yeah.
Or if they do a kick off a punch, what I want to try to avoid is, you know, I don't want to yell left kick, right kick. Usually I don't do that. And the reason I don't do that is because, one, the other person hears it. Yeah. And they see it coming. And a fighter will tend to walk in and kick. The problem with that is it's easy to counter and defend. So what I'll tell them is set it up. Set up that left kick. Because now what's happening is the opponent's hearing set up the left kick. They know the left kick's coming. Yeah. They don't know what's coming first. So, you know, so I kind of, you know, give general instructions, and based on what the fighter likes to do. So if I know the fighter well, I can tell them, hey, push kick, because I know the body kick's following, or I know if they push kick, they like to throw a long knee afterwards. So, you kind of get to know the fighters, and so you can call out something other than what you really want and get the same results. So that way the opponent doesn't know what's coming, and you kind of are steering the ship without saying, like, right knee now. Yeah, because that puts pressure on the fighter too.
It's sort of interesting because a lot of the cornering experience I have, or more of it, the bulk of it, is out here.
Yeah.
So for me, saying left kick, right kick is fine because usually the Thai opponent doesn't.
They're not going to understand.
They're not going to understand it.
Yeah.
Whereas in America, I remember actually I helped corner Jenny Tung. She fought Natalie Morgan. And I was with Ganyao. And he said to me, "Oh, talk to her in Thai."
Yeah.
Because then Natalie won't understand what's going on, won't hear the instruction. And it also reminds me, one time I fought a long time ago, and I was in the corner fighting the opponent, and my opponent's corner said, "Teep, teep, teep," because they wanted him to teep.
And you did it.
And I did.
Yeah, that happens a lot too, and that's one of the reasons I don't do that. So one of the reasons I'll say set it up, set up that teep, set up, and so because that instruction doesn't really resonate with the opponent. But I've had that happen many times where you say, body kick, and the other person does the body kick, and you're like, oh man, that's and it works, and you're like, oh.
Well, sometimes when they land something clean, I'm like, oh, that was really good. I'll fight.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny in that regard.
Well, so the other part of being in the corner with the fighter is cheering them on. One of the things that Ajahn Rex always did for me was he, oi,
yeah.
And hearing that and kind of understanding what he was doing with that on a deeper level, he was encouraging me to do that again. Yeah. So when there was something I was doing good, he would do that. He would encourage me to do that again, and that was So you're kind of a cheerleader. You're kind of you're there to remind them, to keep them calm, to keep them on task with the strategy, and then of course giving them specific instructions that are working. So if something's working specifically, you want to tell them, hey, your right hand's working.
Yeah,
it's there all day. And that way, you're not telling them, hey, when he does this, throw that right hand. You're just saying, hey, your right hand's working. Your athlete will find the time to use that if you just encourage them to do it. So it's encouraging too.
Yeah, one of the things I do specifically in between rounds is I try and tell them usually just 3 things.
Yep.
And I repeat it. Then usually something along the lines of, this is working, this is something you need to do, this is something else.
Yeah.
Repeat.
That's always good. You want to keep instructions simple, and depends on the athlete for me, because some athletes require more information. So, I'll give them more instruction, but I'll go over the last, just before they go out, I'll go over the 3 most important things. Mm-hmm. So I may give them more instruction in the corner than those 3 things, just so they have that in the back of their mind. But the things that I really want, I repeat. Mm-hmm. And I make sure that they understand it too. So, did you hear what I said? You understand what I said?
Yeah.
Tell me what I said.
That's always a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, because, because they get in the fog of war, they get the adrenaline's going, and sometimes they're nodding their head and everything.
Oh,
and
yeah,
you're taking that as they understand. You ask them like, what did I just say? And they're like, huh? They're looking over at their opponent. It's and that's also something sometimes that I will do as well, is I'll have them look at their opponent.
He's tired.
Yeah, look. Well, and especially if they're tired. Mm-hmm. So if they're tired, like in the corner, I have them look at the opponent and say, look, he's more tired than you.
Yeah.
Just, to give them that, like, encouragement that, look, I mean, he's tired too. It's a matter of who wants it more, and, giving them that, hey, you can do it kind of thing. It's a simple comment, but when you look at it, it goes pretty deep. So, hey, yeah.
And then something that's maybe a little different out here than in the States. Again, I haven't really cornered that much in the States. Is out here, there's tons of people yelling at you.
Yes.
In the States, it's been a while, so I don't feel the atmosphere is the same. So what?
It's not. Yeah.
What do you do when there's a bunch of different voices?
Yeah, I remember fighting, one time I didn't have, Rex was gone, he wasn't in my corner, and this Thai man just kept coming up and giving me all this advice.
Yeah,
like
that's
all the
pretty
time.
normal.
And it's pretty normal out here, and that's, he gave me some good advice.
Yeah, that's the other thing I was going to say.
But some of it, wasn't so good. And so you have to be very careful out here too, because you have gamblers and you have promoters, and, promoters want a good show. Gamblers want a certain outcome. So, advice isn't always, you've got to be really careful about what advice you take. Mm-hmm. If you're winning a fight and you're way ahead and it's the last round and they're telling you to walk in, mm-hmm. where you can get elbowed, it's probably not a good idea. It's mm-hmm. probably a better idea to keep your safety and your distance and your lead. Because they're hoping for that. They're hoping for that opponent to score that elbow and cut you, and so you just got to kind of use common sense. And as a coach, I always want to be in the practices with my team, so they get familiar with my voice.
Yeah.
So
mm-hmm.
and really, like, if they start looking around to advice to others, I look at me, listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
Don't listen to anybody else. Listen to me, and just keeping them on track with what I may listen to what the people have to say as well, and I may analyze that and say, hey, that's probably a good idea, or it's mm-hmm. not. And one of the parts of my system of cornering is that I have my second give me their assessment of the round.
Yeah.
So they'll give me their assessment of the round and what they feel is working, because they may see something that I didn't, or they may see it from a different perspective. So I want to get that feedback. But also, I have them watch the corner of the other fighter. So
that's pretty smart. I haven't had that happen.
Yeah. So
that's
what happens is their job as the second on my team of cornering is to give me the feedback. Okay, they want him to kick, mm-hmm. or they want him to walk in and punch. So you can see that a lot of times by the gestures, especially out here in Thailand. They're like, they get really the top of their hands. So you can kind of see like what their corner is telling them. So we can plan for that a little bit. That gives us a little bit of an edge on the next round, because we kind of know, okay, what is their overall strategy for the next round. So strategies can change, and so if they're telling them, hey, walk forward, then we know that. We know to be prepared for that, so we might draw, or we wait for them and catch them coming in, or we move and throw off that forward movement, mm-hmm. especially if they're linear fighters. So there's a lot of information that's valuable in that, but there are cornermen that are very stoic. Like myself, I'm not going to do that. And Brian Pope Joy, there's other people that in the corner, they're like really like, they'll get in the face, they'll tell you exactly what to do, but there's no hand movements and wild, yelling, I gotta do this. There's none of that. So, the other corner looking at us probably isn't going to get that same mm-hmm. information. So, that's just kind of something that I do.
So, two things that are important for when you're cornering that everyone has to deal with at some point are when the boxer is wobbled or cut.
Yep.
So wobbled and cut. Obviously, they're two different things. What are you doing for those circumstances?
Well, the main thing for me when a fighter gets wobbled, depending on whether I'm talking to them in the corner after the round or whether it's during the round. I mean, we want them to be safe. So, as a coach, as a cornerman, the number one thing is to protect your fighter. So, if my fighter's wobbled, I may give them advice from the sidelines to push, kick, and move. I don't want them to necessarily cover because that can
Yeah, a lot of times
problems.
people just shell up and stay there, and
That-
then
that's
they're
usually when they get
basically
caught.
a
Yeah.
heavy bag.
Yeah. That's so I'll want them to move. I'll want them to push kick. I'll want them to step and pivot around them and give them a lot of movement and give them some time to clear their head a little bit and get their breath back. If it's in the corner, the main thing is I want to get them off of living in the past. So, what happens is if the fighter has a particularly bad round and they're sometimes you'll get the feedback from them because they're talking about it. They're like, yeah, man, I can't, this,
Yeah,
and they're stuck in round one. You got to move them on into round two. So you got to get them focused on, listen, you got to be in the moment because you're not going to win a fight by living in round one, and you're not going to win a fight by going all the way forward to getting the belt. You win the fight in the moment. So we've got to get them in the moment, doing what they need to do to win exchanges from that point and build that confidence back up. And sometimes the advice is going to be to do something that's going to build confidence. It may not be the best, it may not be the knockout, technique, but it's going to be something to just help them build that confidence back up.
One of the things that when I fought, especially in America, that was hard was if there was an 8 count or, if I had lost a round. I'd be told, oh, you lost a round, and it's only 3 rounds. So
Right.
it's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
A third of the way through this fight, I'm losing, And
Well, you've got to know your fighter when you give them advice like that. So for me, there are fighters that need to hear that. Like that lights the flame under their ass. And then there's fighters that will shut down because of that. So and that's again, that's why as an ancillary kind of second in the corner, I'm not going to be nearly as active because I don't know that fighter well enough to really give them that type of advice. But I want to know the fighter well enough that I know, all right, hey, you lost that round, you've got 2 more rounds, you got to win these 2 rounds. If that's gonna motivate them, or if I say, listen, next round, this is what we need to do, and just get them on track. So, it's really the advice is going to depend on the fighter. So if I'm working with you and that makes you feel nervous and not intense and not
performance anxiety,
then I need to, and the same thing you were mentioning about cuts. Like, for me, I almost ignore it. So I go to work on it and almost ignore it.
Yeah, have you found many people get upset about it? Or, I mean, for me out here, most of the people that I've worked with, when they've been cut, they don't care. Whereas...
Right. Well, one of the things that I look for is when they're cut, I look for signs that it's really bothering them. One of the signs is that they'll slow down their techniques. They're not doing anything. They're just moving around, or they're covering up, or they're constantly touching it. So they're really, really conscious of it. So, if that's the case, again, I just go to my old standard, which is basically ignoring it. When they get in the corner, I don't pay any mind to it. I'm talking to them. I'm taking care of the cut, but I'm not talking about the cut.
What specifically are you doing with the cut?
It depends really on where you're at, I guess, and what's allowed, because there are different regulations, different places. Some places you have access to adrenaline. Some places you do not.
adrenaline is not really used out here in Thailand.
Yeah, which
I was
is
actually surprised. Yeah, it's a bit crazy.
You know,
I feel like I should get it because, obviously last night there were 2 fighters and 2 cuts. Jalil's wasn't really that bad. It was a bit wide.
below the eye.
It was below the eye. It was a bit wide, but it wasn't a big issue. The cut for Omar actually was more dangerous. It was right on the edge of the eyebrow.
Yeah.
The blood was running down into the inside of his eye. He actually told me after that sometimes he wasn't able to see.
And
so
that's the reason why you want to have that, because you want to stop that, and that stops some of the anxiety about it too.
And then when I was taking care of it, I was a bit confused about what to do. And so after the first round, I just had this Thai guy, one of the trainers from Fairtex, go in and deal with it. Mm-hmm. That way I could watch him see how he dealt with it.
Yeah.
And so I could learn for the future. Because I was like, okay, it's better for him to deal with this now because I don't have time and I can talk to him from the corner. It's not that big of a deal.
And that was probably a really good decision because you don't want to be figuring things out in the corner. And that's one of the nice things about adrenaline is that it does the job for you. So you really, if you have everything prepared ahead of time, you've got a couple of cotton swabs with some adrenaline on it. You've got some clean cloths to clean out, to wipe it off. You've got some Vaseline that has some adrenaline in it. Then you've got a really good chance of just stopping it. That actually happened in that fight I was telling you about, that WBC title fight against Malipet with the English fighter. He got cut in the first round.
Yeah.
And I had adrenaline. I stopped the cut. And
where was the cut?
It was above his eye.
Oh,
yeah. So it could have been bad, but the adrenaline stopped everything, and the fact that there wasn't blood running down his face, I think, kept him focused on the overall strategy. So I think it's good practice, and you do have to kind of know a little bit about it, but the way I learned was simply asking other people that had experience with cuts. Now I get asked a lot to be in the corner for big fights as a cut man because they know I know how to do it. But it's a lot of it's experience.
Yeah.
A lot of it's experience, but you can gain experience through other people too.
Right.
So
yeah.
and some people are don't want to pass on their secrets, whatever. If they're like that, find somebody that will. But because there are people out there that are willing to share. I spent some time with one of the cut men for Freddie Roach. We were just sitting there watching fights and talking about cuts, and he gave me some really good advice, and I still use that today. So,
yeah. And then what about when fighters are wobbled? Are you doing anything specific? Like for me, at least, the Thais have taught me you massage the jaw or the scalp, and you can pull back the hair. So I've actually had this done to me before, and it's helped me. So, just breathe, brings a little more life into your face.
Right, and the idea is to just increase blood circulation in that. But, for me, concussion is a swelling of the brain.
Yeah.
So for me, ice on the back of the neck and the top of the head are usually my go-to because that's going to reduce the swelling. And it will also wake up the fighter a little bit because put ice on somebody's head, they're not going to sit there and fall asleep. So I think for me that's my go-to. I have pulled on people's hair and do all that stuff too, but it just kind of depends on the situation. But for me, ice is usually a general solution just to kind of get the swelling down. With the jaw, I get that because that's a lot of times those are your vital points, your knockout points is the chin and the jaw, and getting hit back there can tighten things up and can so I get that. But for me, my main go-to is ice for when somebody's wobbled.
So, and then what are you doing after the fight? They've won, they've lost. What is going on?
Well, it's always tempting, in a win to just be super celebratory and excited. And I want to celebrate with them in a win. So I do. I want them to be happy about it. I just don't want them to get overly, excited, and because sometimes that can kind of like make some people feel like overconfident for their next fight. Oh, I won that one. I celebrated, everything. But I think, if somebody has lost a fight, I do not talk to them much about what went wrong that night at all. I just want to make sure they're okay, on a personal level. How are you? You okay? How do you feel? Are you hurt? Those kind of things are more important to me, and it's more important that they know that I care and that I'm there and that they can rely on me. When we win, we want to celebrate, but not overboard. No. And either way, win or lose, the next day or the next couple of days, I generally give my athletes get 2 days off. They get 2 days off after, and they're back in the gym. I want them to have a couple of days to relax. I want them to, either soak up that win and feel good about it, walk around, mow their lawn with their belt on or whatever they're going to do, But, and if they've lost, sometimes they need a couple of days to they'll watch the videos and go, oh, well, I didn't do all that bad. Like generally when people lose, they over-exaggerate it in their head. It was just like, oh, I did so terrible. And then when they look at the tape, they're like, it wasn't that bad. Yeah. Like I did some things good. And so one of the things that I do with them when they do come back in is I do a debriefing. So a debriefing for me is it starts out with, what did you do well? Because that does get them to notice, because sometimes people think I didn't do anything right. And that's never true. It's never the case. Yeah. I mean, like,
there's always something
There's always something they did right. So,
you got in there.
Yeah.
That's something.
That's usually, most people never will. So, I think that's, it's important to get them focused on, okay, what did I do well? And they can start to look at that, and we'll talk about that. We'll discuss that. And then I'll give them the things that I felt that they did well. Because sometimes they'll miss some things. Or I'll agree with them on the things that I think, I think you did that really well, actually, And then when we look at, all right, so what could you do better next time?
Yeah.
And so it's not, what did you do wrong? It's what can you do better next time? And then from that debriefing, what I want to do with that athlete. So whatever they say, oh, I could do this better, I could do that better. I want to develop a plan of action to actually take that into implementation. So if they say, well, I didn't check kicks, well, we are working on checking kicks. We're working on knee blocking kicks for days and days. Yeah. And one of the things that does is not only does it shore that weakness up, but it builds that confidence back up that oh yeah, I can do this again.
And then when are you booking the next fight?
As soon as I can, generally.
Do you ever book before the fight is over? So sometimes
we have more than one fight set up. But generally I try not to do that unless we've got a fair amount of time between, because you don't want to do that often, because you have promoters that are counting on you.
Yeah.
And if you let down the promoter too many times, I had one fighter that kept backing out of fights, and what happened is it affected my whole team.
Right.
And so I had to make a change, but you have to be very careful with that, because you want a good reputation with the promoters. As far as, look, we scheduled, we will be here, we will be on time, we will be on weight. One of the things that, I've had the most trouble with promoters is where they change things on me. They want to change the rule set last minute. They want to change the fight last minute. I just don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, we agreed to this. I did my part. you do yours. Like, you know, for me, that's where I'll draw the line with a promoter. But as far as setting up fights, you know, ahead, you can do that, but you've got to be pretty sure that your athlete's going to be okay by that time, and you're not going to have you know, a problem and have to call the promoter and say, oh yeah, we can't do it. Yeah.
So, sort of wrapping things up, what future projects do you have going on? What are you doing these days?
Well, I'm in Thailand now.
Obviously.
I've been here for a while. My team is doing a really good job back home, so that's really great.
Yeah, shout out to Robert and Nicole and
Patty, John, Cassius, Kelly, and Alex now. So we've got a really good team doing things, and so that's fantastic. I have written a book. I'm working on a book project, and that's exciting. It's about coaching, so coaching Muay Thai. So excited to get that out. And I've recently opened a Muay Thai camp in Isan, Thailand. It's in a very, very tough region of Thailand, very economically challenged. Where, you know, we're doing this, it's a non-profit model, so we're not charging anything. We've had some great sponsors. You know, shout out to Andrew at Infight Style is helping us out. We have some other really great sponsors and support from abroad and back home that want to help the kids to have something positive in their lives. They really need it. Like, you know,
for sure.
It's a whole different life over here.
Yeah. Anyone that's actually been to Isan knows what it's like, and it's hard. It's very, very difficult.
Well, their environment's really tough. I mean, when it comes down to it, you know, they don't have a lot of prospects for their future. You know, I mean, that's really, really what it boils down to. And in Isan, if you have food, clothing, and shelter,
that's pretty good.
You're doing better than a lot.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like food, clothing, and shelter is everything, and anything above that is like icing on the cake. So, you know,
amazing.
whereas in Western, you know, in America, like we want all the extra goodies and all these things that, you know,
we
kind
want
of
a nice car. And,
they just want to eat and sleep and have a place to sleep that's safe. And, you know, and that's really a lot of times in that region, you know, the families have a hard time meeting those basic necessities. So we're there and I'm there teaching the kids in a capacity that hopefully will give them something positive in their lives, some physical activity, some focus, some, you know, discipline, some respect, some you know, a place that's safe for them. And of course, you know, I do also plan on teaching them English.
Yeah.
So
that's,
you know, this
a good
can give
opportunity
them,
for sure.
you know, a little bit of a leg up. The challenge is, you know, we can't change their environment.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of their folks, you know, drink and just, I mean, it's just really a hard life.
Yeah.
It's really a hard life. And so we want to help the kids, and that's really, I'm really excited about that. You know, it's not something, you know, I'm doing to fill my bank account, but it definitely fills my heart.
Yeah.
I do love the kids. We had 9 kids for our first class, 14 for the second class.
That's good.
And word's out. So really, really, really super excited to see that go forward.
And then Double Dose in America is doing well.
Doing well. We have Double Dose in America. We have a Double Dose in Australia that's doing well. Benji and Nikia. And now we have Double Dose in Thailand. So, you know, we have Double Doses in 3 continents. Now, in Thailand, Double Dose doesn't really translate.
Yeah.
So we've decided to keep the DDMT, Double Dose Muay Thai, and call it DD Muay Thai. So D actually means
good,
and DD means very good. So
it's a double dose of good.
There you go. That's exactly it.
So wrapping things up, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the main thing for me is, you know, if you're a coach and you're a corner, you know, I would just say, you know, take care of your athletes. Like that's the most important thing. Going back to just like what do I do after the fight, one of the things I generally always do is to call them the next day and just make sure they're okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think, just care for people, care for your athletes, protect them. You have to, as a coach, you have to protect them from, the promoters. You have to protect them from their opponent. You have to protect them from the outside influence.
From themselves
especially. Really, themselves especially. A lot of fights are lost in the locker room.
That is definitely true.
Yeah, so for me, just if you're listening, you're a coach. Take care of your people. That's the most important thing. Look after them, care for them, care for each other in general. Right now, in the world today, we need a lot more of that.
Yeah.
I would just say, definitely do that. I mean, like Isan's a really tough place, but it's also beautiful.
Yeah.
It always depends on what you look for.
Mm-hmm.
What you look for is what you'll see. So I hope people will take that because that's not outside of coaching. It is part of coaching, but it is important in the world today.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Bryan.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So that was a really interesting episode. I learned a lot from it. There's things that specifically Dobler has taught me about cornering. Recently, a small detail is about when you wrap the hands, a lot of times the hair on the person's wrist or arm will be ripped off unless you do it backwards. He's also shown me some ways to tie cups, so that all really, really good small details that are important. Then especially it's interesting because a lot of my experience cornering is out here in Thailand. So that's going to be vastly different than in America, which we briefly touched on. So I'm excited to have had him on. We will be continuing the series, and I will be a little bit better about my scheduling. So I already have the next person lined up. It's going to be Tony out of Diamond Muay Thai Gym. So excited about that. So as always, this has been On Fighting in Thailand, the best news and analysis covering the economics and infrastructure of Muay Thai. I'm Matt Lucas, journalist, commentator, and ex-Muay Thai fighter. Make stronger fighters, make stronger people.